The spring moon-claiming ceremony at Thornwall had been held in the same yard for 400 years. I knew this because my father had told me, and his father had told him, and presumably the chain of fathers stretched back to a time before the stone arch at the yard's eastern gate had been worn smooth by 4 centuries of pack hands pressing against it in the traditional greeting. I had stood under that arch on my first day as Alpha King of Thornwall, 7 years ago, and felt the weight of 400 years of custom settle onto my shoulders, with the particular density of things that have been done this way for so long that no one quite remembers why they started. The spring moon claiming was the pack's most formal ceremony. Every unmated wolf of age presented before the full pack, the Alpha King present to witness. It was not a mating ceremony in itself. Those came later if the bond struck in private and in the wolf's own time. The claiming was the presentation, the pack seeing its own, the acknowledgement that these were Thornwall's people and Thornwall's Alpha stood witness to them. I had overseen 7 of them. I was standing at my place beside the ceremony stone, in the formal position I had occupied for 7 consecutive springs, watching Elder Dovrin manage the gate presentations when the commotion happened. It was not large. A commotion at a formal ceremony rarely is the social mechanics of pack life discouraged spectacle, and the people closest to the gate managed their faces carefully. But I was the Alpha King and my eyes were trained on the yard, and I saw the young woman at the gate, and I saw Elder Dovrin's posture shift into the particular configuration that meant he was delivering an unpleasant piece of administrative information with great satisfaction. The young woman was perhaps 20. She wore a green dress, good cloth, the hem touching the spring grass, and she was carrying nothing, no presentation letter, no family escort. She was standing at the gate with the particular stillness of someone who has prepared for the possibility of this moment and decided in advance how they will meet it. I watched Elder Dovrin speak. I could not hear the words from across the yard, but I had known Dovrin for 7 years and I could read the shape of what he was saying. Not invited, not listed, not pack-blooded in the confirmed sense, not the ceremony's concern. I knew his catalog of exclusions. The young woman received this. She did not argue. I had expected if she argued it would have been a small enough disturbance, easily managed. A quiet word from an aide and the gate matter would have resolved itself. She did not argue. She did not appeal. She did not look past Dovrin toward me, which people in contested gate situations often did, a kind of tactical move toward the highest authority in the yard. She looked at Dovrin for a moment directly, without performance, and then she turned. She walked toward the forest road. That was all. A green dress moving through the spring grass, away from the gate, away from the ceremony yard, away from the 400 years of stone arch and custom, and the rows of young women waiting to be seen by their pack. My wolf did something I was not expecting. He had been composed for the ceremony, the particular trained composure that 7 years of formal events had built in both of us, the ability to hold the alphas bearing through hours of protocol without the interior noise that some wolves generate in crowds. He was composed. He was, in fact, almost professionally inert. And then the wind shifted. I do not know how to describe what a mate bond scent does to a wolf who has never felt one before. I had read the scholars' accounts. I had heard older pack members describe it. None of the descriptions prepared me for the actual physical fact of it, a complete and instantaneous cessation of everything else, not a gradual drawing of attention, not a pleasant smell that made me curious, a wall. The world on one side, and on the other side, a single point of absolute necessity, the way a man lost in a dark room suddenly knows exactly where the door is without seeing it. My wolf turned. Not toward the ceremony, not toward any of the 50 people in the yard, toward the tree line at the yard's western edge, where a young woman in a green dress was walking away from us along the forest road. I was moving before I decided to move. I am a practical man. I have been told this many times by my counsel and by people who know me well enough to have opinions, and I have generally received the observation as accurate. I do not act without understanding the action. In 7 years as Alpha King of Thornwall, I had developed a considerable facility for knowing why I was doing a thing before I did it. I crossed the ceremony yard without knowing anything except that if she reached the tree line, I would be doing something considerably more public and considerably less dignified than whatever I was currently doing, which was already public enough. The ceremony behind me went very quiet. I noticed this distantly, the way you notice weather when you are already committed to going out into it. 50 people had just watched their Alpha King walk away from his place at the ceremony stone, cross the yard at something approaching a controlled urgency, and exit through the western edge of the grass toward the forest road. I was aware that this was not the ceremony's usual sequence of events. She had almost reached the first of the flowering ash trees. "Wait," I said. She stopped. She turned around. She looked at me the same way she had looked at Elder Davrin, directly, without performance. She was not afraid of me. Some people manage not being afraid of the Alpha King through a visible effort. You can see them assembling it, the particular straightening of the spine that is a decision rather than a natural posture. She was simply not afraid of me, the way she was simply not afraid of the gate, and it was not a performance in either direction. "My lord," she said, the same voice I would have expected from the way she carried herself, even, unhurried, not asking anything. The mate bond was burning on my left inner wrist, not the faint silver blue I had heard described in the scholars' accounts, the full thing, the permanent mark, silver white and warm, the temperature of something that has decided it is done arriving and has arrived. I held my wrist up so she could see it, because it seemed like the relevant piece of information, and I am a practical man. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. "I see," she said. "Your name," I said. "Lyrian," she said. "My family are the Bren traders. We hold the Eastern Market Road." "You were turned away at the gate," I said. "Yes." "By Elder Davrin." "Yes." I looked at the mark on my wrist. I looked at her. The wolf had gone from absolute demand to something that was not quite stillness, but was the warmth on the other side of urgency. The thing after you have found what you were looking for, and it is still there and not going anywhere. "I am going to ask you to come back through the gate with me," I said. "You don't have to. But I would like you to." She considered this. Not performing consideration, actually thinking about it, the way she did everything, with full attention and no theater. "All right," she said. We walked back through the western grass together. The ceremony yard was still very quiet. I counted, without meaning to, approximately 50 people trying to manage their faces with varying success. Elder Davrin, at the gate, had the expression of a man who has just understood that a decision he made this morning is going to define the rest of his career. I brought Lyrian through the yard to the ceremony stone. The ceremony stone at Thornwall is a flat piece of gray granite that has been in the same spot for 400 years, worn smooth at the edges by the hands of every Alpha King who has ever stood at it. I had touched it hundreds of times. I stood at it now and held out my hand, and Lyrian took it, and the mate bond mark on my wrist flared fully, warmly, the silver white visible to everyone in the yard now, not just to me, and the pack saw. 50 people went very quiet in the specific way of 50 people who have just witnessed something irrevocable. "This is Lyrian of the Bren traders," I said, in the formal carrying voice I used for ceremony announcements, "who is my fated mate and will be Luna of Thornwall." The pack was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, beginning with the people closest to the ceremony stone, and moving outward through the yard in the way that the pack's acknowledgement always moves, from the center to the edges, from the highest to the lowest, from the formal to the informal, they bowed their heads. Elder Davrin was among them. He was not among the first, but he bowed. Lyrian did not look at him. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and the spring light was warm on the ceremony stone, and the flowering ash trees at the yard's western edge were doing whatever ash trees do in April, which is look unreasonably beautiful, and the mate bond on my wrist was the temperature of something that has been true for a long time and is only just now being acknowledged. There are things I learned about Lyrian in the days that followed that I want to tell correctly, which means telling them in the order I learned them rather than the order that would make the best story. What I learned first, because it was the most immediately relevant piece of information. Her family's invitation to the spring moon claiming had not simply failed to arrive. Elder Davrin had received it. He had received it and noted in his records that the Bren traders were what the pack's older administrative language called smoke people, border traders without confirmed wolf bloodline in the generational record, not pack certified, not counted in the formal rolls. He had made this note, filed the letter, and sent no reply. I learned this from Torvin, my head counselor, who delivered it with the particular careful neutrality of a man who has been working for me long enough to know exactly how I will receive administrative information that reveals a systematic wrong. How long has this categorization been applied to the Bren family? I said. The record goes back 3 Alpha Kings, Torvin said. I sat with this. 3 Alpha Kings, not this year, not a recent error. 3 generations of Thornwall's leadership passing over the Bren family in the formal pack rolls, marking them smoke people in the administrative ledger, which meant no ceremony invitations, which meant no formal pack recognition, which meant the category had been allowed to calcify into fact through sheer repetition, until Davrin could stand at the gate with complete bureaucratic confidence and turn away a young woman whose family had traded on Thornwall's eastern road for generations. I want the category reviewed, I said. All families currently listed as smoke people. Full bloodline review, formal pack consultation, new determinations. I want the Bren family's status formally corrected in the pack record within the week. Torvin noted this without surprise. He had been my head counselor for 5 years, and he had learned to read the difference between my administrative priorities and my personal ones, and he was perceptive enough to understand when they had recently become the same thing. What I learned second, Lyrian had known about the categorization. She told me this herself on the 3rd evening after the ceremony, when we were walking the Eastern Market Road where her family's route ran through the lower forest. She told it the way she told most things, plainly, without asking me to respond in a particular way. She had known since she was 12, when she asked her father why they did not attend the spring moon claiming, and he told her. She had decided, at 12, that she would attend when she came of age regardless of whether an invitation arrived. She had not told her family this plan because she did not want them to worry. You knew you would be turned away, I said. Probably, she said. And you came anyway. Yes. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about this. 12-year-old Lyrian deciding on a course of action and holding it privately for 8 years, neither abandoning it nor making a ceremony of it. Why, I said. She was quiet for a few steps. We were at the part of the forest road where the ash trees grew thickest, and the spring light came through them in the particular broken way that makes everything look like it's moving slightly. Because they were wrong, she said, about what we are. My family has run this road for 4 generations. We are as wolf-blooded as anyone in the pack rolls. The category was a mistake made by someone who found it convenient not to look too carefully. She paused. I didn't attend because I thought you would come after me. I attended because it was right to attend, and being turned away at the gate was going to be what it was going to be. I looked at her. The broken spring light moved on her face, and she was looking at the road ahead, the way she looked at most things, directly, without asking it to be different. You weren't performing, I said, when you walked away. No, she said. You genuinely didn't care whether I came. She thought about this. "I hope someone would come," she said. "I think I've hoped that quietly since I was 12. But I had decided that whether someone came or not, I was going to walk away from that gate the same way." I understood at this moment what the wolf had understood at the ceremony, that she had not walked away from the gate in order to make him come. She had walked away from the gate because it was the right way to leave. And the bond, the mate bond with its ancient, inarguable logic, had known that the woman who walked away from Thornwall's gate with her head level and no argument in her eyes was exactly the person it had been looking for. The formal correction of the Bren family's pack status took 4 days, which was faster than Torvin had estimated, and a function of the fact that the bloodline review, when actually conducted, took approximately 30 minutes. The Brens were wolf-blooded in the traditional sense, clearly documented in the older regional records that predated the administrative category's creation. The category had been applied not because of any genuine question about bloodline, but because the Brens were border traders, people who moved, who did not stay within the pack's formal territory year-round, who were useful but inconvenient to count. 3 Alpha Kings had found it convenient not to look carefully. I looked carefully. The formal correction was entered in the pack record. Elder Davrin's gate decision was reviewed and formally noted as an error in the ceremonial record, and the broader category of smoke people was suspended pending a full review of every family listed under it, which Torvin estimated would take the better part of the summer, and which I told him to begin immediately. Davrin appeared in my study on the 5th day. He was a man of 60, with the bearing of someone who had occupied a position of minor authority for so long that the position had become part of his posture. He came to say, I thought, that he understood the correction and would act accordingly. What he actually said surprised me. "The girl," he said, "Lyrian." "The Luna," I said. He was quiet for a moment, adjusting to the word which he would need to get used to. "Yes," he said, "the Luna." He stopped. She looked at me at the gate before she turned. "Yes," I said. She didn't look. He stopped again. He was, I understood, trying to describe something that had clearly stayed with him. "She wasn't angry," he said. "I expected anger or pleading." "No," I said. "She just," he seemed to run out of language for it. "She looked at you directly," I said, "without performance." "Yes," he said, "that." I did not say anything more. What I was thinking was not something I needed to say to Davrin, but I will say it here, because it was the thing I understood most clearly about Lyrian in those early days, and it has not changed in everything since. She had not needed Elder Davrin to know he was wrong. She already knew it. The knowledge of her own worth was not something she was waiting for the pack to confirm. She had carried it on the Eastern Market Road for 8 years, through spring ceremonies she did not attend and invitations that never arrived, and it had not diminished. It had simply been waiting for the world to catch up. The Luna ceremony at Thornwall is simpler than the spring moon claiming. It does not require 50 people and a ceremony stone and a formal order of presentation. It requires the Alpha King, the chosen Luna, the pack's 2 eldest witnesses, the formal words, and whatever light is available. We did it at dawn, at the ceremony stone, with Torvin and the 2 eldest pack members as witnesses, and the full pack invited but not required. They came anyway, all of them, or near enough, and stood in the morning spring light around the stone while I spoke the formal words, and Lyrian received them with the composure she brought to everything. And the mate bond on my wrist was warm in the way it had been warm since the moment it appeared, steady and certain, and not interested in performing its certainty for anyone. Lyrian's family was there. Her father, a compact man with her same direct eyes, who had run the Eastern Market Road for 30 years and had carried, without complaint, the designation of smoke people in Thornwall's records for all of them. He bowed when the ceremony was done, and I thought I saw something in his face that was not quite tears but was in the neighborhood, the release of something held a long time. After the ceremony, when the formal part was finished and the pack had begun the informal gathering that always followed Thornwall ceremonies, Lyrian's father came to me. He did not say much. He shook my hand in the grip of the Eastern traders, two-handed, firm, a particular style that I had learned meant something about trust in the border settlements, and then he went to stand with his daughter. I watched them together. She had her father's composure, I understood, and she had decided at 12 that she would walk to the ceremony gate when she came of age, and she had held that decision for 8 years, and she had arrived at the gate and been turned away and walked away without argument, and none of that had changed what she was. What she was had always been the same. It just needed the world, and one alpha king who could not cross a ceremony yard fast enough to stop treating it as smoke. 7 springs have passed since the morning Lyrian walked away from Thornwall's gate. The smoke people category does not exist in our pack records anymore. Torvin's summer review found 32 families listed under it. 31 of those families, when their records were properly examined, were wolf-blooded in the full traditional sense. The 32nd case was genuinely ambiguous, and we handled it through the formal consultation process rather than an administrative assumption, which is how it should always have been handled. The Eastern Market Road runs through what is now the pack's most active trade corridor. The Bren family has expanded their route north and south. Lyrian's younger brother took over the day-to-day management 3 years ago, which freed her father to do what he does best, which is apparently find new roads that no one has thought to run yet. Elder Davrin retired 2 years ago. He came to see me before he left, which I had not expected. He said he had been thinking about the gate, and about what he saw in the young woman's face when she turned to leave, and that he thought he understood now what he had not understood then, which was that the category had never been about bloodline. It had been about convenience. He said this with the particular difficulty of someone who is not accustomed to correcting themselves and is doing it anyway, and I thanked him for it. Lyrian, when I told her, said, "Good." She said it without heat or satisfaction, simply noting that the correction was correct. This is the thing that has not changed in 7 springs. She does not need the world to perform its acknowledgement for her benefit. She simply notes with that level unhurried attention when things are wrong and when they become right. She has the same quality in the pack hall, in council sessions, in the dealings with the border settlements that make up most of Thornwall's administrative life. She does not raise her voice. She does not require ceremony. She simply attends to what is there, directly and without performance. I have come to understand over 7 years that this quality, the one that made Elder Davrin describe her as not angry, not pleading, simply looking, is not composure in the sense of emotion suppressed. She feels things fully, but she does not feel the need to perform her feelings for an audience, because her feelings are hers and not a petition to the world for recognition. She has never needed the world's recognition. She needed, and this is the thing I understood fully only later, when I had time to think it through, she needed only one person to cross a ceremony yard at something approaching a controlled urgency and say, "Wait." I crossed it. I would cross it again every spring for the rest of my life, and she knows this, which is perhaps why she has never once, in 7 years, made me prove it. The mate bond mark on my left inner wrist is the same silver white it was the morning it appeared. It does not fade. I have read the scholars' accounts carefully now, and they note that a mate bond mark settled in claiming does not change, does not brighten or dim with mood or circumstance, but simply remains, steady and warm, a fact rather than a feeling. They called her smoke, something that dissolves, something that was there and then gone and left nothing lasting. The mark on my wrist has been there for 7 years. She is the most permanent thing I know.